Imagine, for a moment, a time long before the world as we know it. Over 4.5 billion years ago, Earth was nothing more than a swirling mass of dust and gases in the cold, dark void of space. There was no sky, no oceans, no life, and certainly no people. Just a vast, empty space where the remnants of a long-gone star floated in an endless expanse. Yet, from this cosmic chaos, something incredible was about to unfold. This mass of dust and gas, left behind by the death of a star, slowly began to come together under the force of gravity. Over time, this clump of cosmic materials began to form a young planet. As it did, collisions with asteroids and other debris caused the surface to heat up, and the planet began to melt. It wasn't a pretty sight. Earth's early surface was a molten mess, but even in this fiery state, something magical was happening. The building blocks for life were slowly coming together, like the quiet hum of a song playing in the background, waiting to be discovered. For millions of years, the surface of Earth was incredibly hostile. No oceans, no life, just a hot, bubbling mass of rock. But as time passed, things began to change. The planet slowly cooled, and as it did, water vapor started to form clouds. Eventually, the clouds released their moisture, and it rained. Slowly but surely, the Earth's surface cooled enough to form oceans. The rains filled the valleys, and the planet became a vast, watery world, quiet, blue sphere in the darkness of space. And within those oceans, life began to stir in the deep, warm waters of early Earth. Simple chemicals began to interact. They didn't know it yet, but these basic molecules were about to give birth to something extraordinary. These molecules slowly began to form simple structures that could sustain themselves, replicate, and adapt to their surroundings. These were the first life forms, simple, single-celled organisms, floating in the warm waters of our early world. Life was fragile, delicate, but it was also powerful. In the vast oceans, these tiny life forms began to evolve. They drifted in the sea, unaware of the wonders they would bring into the world, and so, from nothing but the raw materials of the universe, life began. Simple, tiny microbes floating quietly in the ocean. As these simple organisms multiplied, life began to change. Over millions of years, something extraordinary happened. These tiny, simple cells began to work together. They formed the first multicellular organisms, tiny collections of cells working as one. These simple colonies of cells were the building blocks of the complex creatures that would one day walk, swim, and fly across Earth. Just think about it. How strange it must have been that simple cells began to join together, not just to survive, but to thrive. This step from being single to becoming many, working together as one, was the beginning of a new chapter. It was a quiet, humble beginning, but it set in motion everything that would come after. From these simple, multicellular life forms, the diversity of life on Earth would slowly begin to grow. Fast forward to about 541 million years ago, was still largely a water world, but the oceans were about to experience something incredible. Life exploded into diversity. It's known as the Cambrian explosion, a time when the seas came alive in a way no one had ever seen before. Suddenly, there were creatures of all shapes and sizes, some simple, others strange and complex. The seas were filled with early forms of animals like arthropods, mollusks, and the very first vertebrates. Each creature had its own role to play, creating an early version of the ecosystems we know today. Life was vibrant, active, and full of variety. And just as Earth's oceans were teeming with life, evolution was moving in quiet, unseen ways, shaping creatures and ecosystems for the future. The early sea creatures adapted and evolved, each one discovering a new way to survive. Some grew shells for protection, others evolved faster bodies to escape predators. The ocean was a place of both danger and opportunity, and for every creature, there was a challenge to face, a change to embrace. It was the start of a long process of adaptation, evolution, and transformation. Then, a few million years later, the first vertebrates began to appear. Small fish-like creatures, they were the beginning of something much greater. From these simple creatures, every animal with a backbone would eventually evolve. They were the ancestors of all the animals that would follow: fish, amphibians, reptiles, mammals, and eventually us. What was once simple, floating organisms in the oceans had now become something more complex. They were beginning to shape the future of life on Earth. As Earth's story moved forward, life began to change in dramatic ways. The oceans filled with a dazzling array of life, and then, slowly, life began to move onto land. The first plants would begin to take root, and eventually, animals would join them, creating a new world on the surface of Earth. But for now, life remained in the oceans. And there, in the quiet depths, life continued to evolve, simple, calm, and full of potential. The world was slowly transforming, one small step at a time. Now, if we could somehow look back on these moments, we might be struck by just how fragile the beginnings of life were. Yet from such simple beginnings came everything we know today, from the animals in the forests to the cities we live in. Every living thing on Earth traces its origins back to these first, tiny, simple cells. These humble beginnings tell the story of life on Earth, how it began, how it grew, and how it continues to evolve. It's a long story, one that stretches across billions of years, and it's still unfolding today. Take a deep breath and imagine a world long before the cities, the roads, and the bustling life we know today. Picture a time when the Earth was very different, a world where towering forests, endless plains, and vast seas stretched out before the first footsteps of mammals ever touched the ground. It's around 252 million years ago, and Earth has just recovered from a great disaster. The Permian-Triassic extinction event wiped out nearly 90% of life on the planet. The Earth was empty, and the ecosystems that once thrived were no longer there. But from the ashes of destruction, new life began to rise. It was as if the planet was starting over, new beginnings were being written. In this quiet, empty world, the first dinosaurs began to emerge. They were small at first, not the giants we often think of, but the beginning of something extraordinary. Earth's climate during this time was warm and lush, and the continents were still joined together in the supercontinent Pangaea. This massive landmass created vast environments for these early creatures to explore. The dinosaurs were not the only ones in this new world. Early mammals, small and timid, crept through the underbrush. They were not the dominating species yet, just humble creatures hiding from the mighty reptiles. But the dinosaurs, these magnificent creatures, would soon rule the land. Now, imagine walking through the warm, dense forests of the Triassic period. The ground beneath your feet is soft, the air heavy with the scent of new life. Above, strange, long-tailed creatures with scaly skin move with purpose. They're dinosaurs, but they haven't yet reached their full potential. They are the first hints of what is to come, the towering giants, the great predators, the creatures that would later define the Mesozoic era. The dinosaurs began to thrive in this warm, prehistoric world. Their bones grew stronger, their bodies grew larger, and soon they began to fill every niche. Some dinosaurs, like the towering sauropods, would grow to incredible sizes, their long necks reaching up to the tallest trees. Others, like the carnivorous theropods, became fierce hunters, running across the plains and taking down their prey. Can you feel it? What would it have been like to witness these creatures moving through the forests, the sound of their feet crashing against the earth, the scent of the ancient world filling the air, the rustling of leaves as these magnificent creatures passed by? The world was alive in a way we can only imagine. As the Jurassic period unfolded, the planet became a stage for these giants. The Earth's climate was warm and humid, and lush forests covered much of the land. Dinosaurs dominated every corner of the planet. Some roamed the ground, others flew through the skies, and others still, like the marine reptiles, swam through the oceans. These creatures lived in a world far removed from our own. The oceans were filled with marine reptiles like ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs. In the skies, pterosaurs glided with massive wingspans, searching for prey below. And on the land, herbivores like Stegosaurus and Brachiosaurus moved slowly, feeding on the abundant plant life. And of course, there were the predators, ruthless hunters like Allosaurus, whose sharp teeth were made for tearing through flesh. The planet was truly an incredible place, where life was constantly evolving and adapting. Dinosaurs weren't just creatures, they were the stars of Earth's stage, each one playing its part in the vast drama of life. But, as with all things, their reign would not last forever. The Jurassic period eventually gave way to the Cretaceous period, and by now, dinosaurs had reached their peak. The Cretaceous was a time of great change, with the Earth continuing to evolve. The continents started to drift apart, oceans spread wide, and new life began to take shape. The dinosaurs of the Cretaceous period were larger than ever before. Some of the largest and most iconic dinosaurs roamed the Earth. Imagine a Tyrannosaurus rex, its massive jaws capable of crushing bone with ease, or a Triceratops, its great horns shining in the sunlight as it grazes peacefully on the plants around it. The Earth was a place of giants, but change was always on the horizon. Life is ever-changing, and the age of the dinosaurs, while majestic, would eventually come to an end. Around 66 million years ago, a massive asteroid slammed into Earth, causing a global catastrophe. The impact was so severe that it altered the climate, blocking sunlight and triggering a chain of events that would lead to the extinction of nearly 75% of life on Earth. Dinosaurs, once the rulers of the planet, were no more, but life on Earth didn't stop. As the dust settled and the Earth began to heal, mammals slowly started to thrive. This was the dawn of a new era, the Age of Mammals. Before we move on to that new chapter, though, let's take a moment to reflect on this incredible world. The rise of the dinosaurs, their reign over the Earth, and their eventual extinction all happened over a long period of time. Yet it all feels like a dreamer world that was once alive with creatures so strange and powerful. It seems impossible that they ever existed. What do you think it would have been like to live in that world? To witness these ancient creatures roaming the Earth? Would you have been in awe of their size and power? Or would you have felt the quiet fear that would come with living in a world where danger could strike at any moment? After the catastrophic end of the dinosaurs, Earth was a very different place. The skies, once ruled by soaring pterosaurs, now lay quiet. The once thriving forests, where giant reptiles roamed, stood empty and still. The Earth's climate had changed. The air was cooler, and the world had entered a new chapter, one without the towering giants of the Mesozoic era. But even in the aftermath of such an immense transformation, life found a way to persist. In the shadows of extinction, a quiet revolution was taking place. Mammals, once small, timid creatures, began to fill the empty spaces left behind by the dinosaurs. The world had become theirs to explore. Imagine it. The Earth was recovering. The forests were growing back, and new, smaller creatures were beginning to emerge from the ground, moving cautiously through the underbrush. These mammals were not the powerful, towering creatures we might think of today. No, they were simple, small, mouse-like creatures, hiding in the shadows, moving mostly at night to avoid the now dominant predators. They were the survivors, the ones who adapted to the changing world for millions of years. Mammals remained small, and their lives were simple. They evolved in the quiet spaces of Earth's ecosystems, learning how to survive in this new world. As the world cooled and the continents continued to drift apart, mammals slowly spread across the Earth. They were not the rulers of the planet yet, but they were beginning to make their mark. Now, picture the scene. The air is cool, the forests are lush, and the first mammals begin to spread out. The planet is still filled with wonders and dangers. These small creatures, with their keen instincts and abilities to adapt, begin to take their place in the ecosystems of Earth. As the ages passed, the mammals evolved, their bodies grew, and so did their brains. Slowly, the small, timid creatures of the past began to evolve into larger, more complex beings. Some evolved to be herbivores, grazing in the meadows, while others became fierce carnivores, hunting the newly emerged prey. The age of mammals had begun, and Earth was slowly being transformed once again. It wasn't just the mammals that were evolving. In the forests, new types of plants were emerging, plants that could survive in cooler, less humid conditions. They, too, were part of the slow and steady transformation of the Earth. Everything, from the smallest insect to the largest mammal, was evolving to fit this changing world. Now, let's take a moment to think. What would it have been like to see the first large mammals walking the Earth? They weren't the mammoths or saber-toothed tigers we know today. These early mammals were strange and different, their forms not yet fully realized. But they were important. These creatures were the first step toward the animals we recognize now, the ancestors of the powerful mammals that would follow. By about 65 million years ago, Earth's ecosystems were becoming more diverse and complex. The mammals, once small and hidden, were becoming more varied. They were beginning to thrive, to evolve into many different species, filling a unique role in the world. From small, fluffy creatures scurrying through the underbrush to the giant beasts roaming the plains, life was beginning to take on its modern forms at this point. Earth's climate was still shifting. The first grasses had appeared on the planet, and along with them came the rise of herbivores. These creatures could now graze on vast fields of plants, and in doing so, they began to shape the landscapes. This opened up new opportunities for predators to thrive. Creatures like the saber-toothed tiger with its sharp teeth and the mammoths with their towering frames began to fill the world. But in the shadows of these great creatures, something else was taking shape, something that would change the course of life on Earth forever. It was a quiet beginning. like a soft whisper in the dark. The first early human ancestors began to emerge, tiny, almost unnoticeable creatures that walked upright and carried simple tools. They were not yet like us, not fully human, but they were the beginning of something extraordinary. Imagine, if you will, standing in the tall grass. The sun sets low on the horizon, casting a golden light over the landscape. In the distance, you see these early human ancestors small, walking upright, with a curiosity that would eventually drive them to explore the world. They are not yet aware of their potential. They are simply creatures moving through the world, just as the other animals do. But these creatures, these humble ancestors, were on the verge of something incredible. What might have been going through their minds as they walked through the tall grass, just like the other animals of the earth? They had yet to understand their place in the grand story of life, but they were destined to shape the world in ways that no other creature could dot. As millions of years passed, these early human ancestors began to evolve. Their brains grew larger, their bodies more adept. They began to create tools and use fire. Slowly, they began to change the world around them, just by surviving, but by altering their environment. Their ability to adapt, to think, and to use tools would be what set them apart from the other creatures on Earth. And so, as the Earth continued to evolve, these early human ancestors began to spread across the planet. They moved from Africa into new lands, learning how to live in different environments. They encountered other creatures, some of which were similar to them, while others were strange and new. But the journey of life was far from over. As humans evolved, they would face challenges and changes, and the world around them would change, too. The rise of mammals and the early human ancestors was just the beginning of a long journey that would eventually lead to the world we know today. Can you imagine being a part of that world? Walking alongside the first human ancestors, breathing in the air, feeling the earth beneath your feet. It's a humbling thought, knowing that the simple creatures of the past would evolve into the powerful, conscious beings that shape the earth today. As the earth continued to change, so did the creatures that inhabited it. It was now a world of mammals, where life was thriving and evolving. But something else was quietly unfolding, a story of transformation, one that would eventually bring about the rise of human civilization. Imagine for a moment a world where the air is fresh and crisp, and the sun rises over rolling hills. Early humans, the ancestors of the beings we are today, walk slowly across the land. Their feet brush against the soft earth, their eyes scanning the horizon, curious about the world around them. They are simple in the grand scheme of things, but within them lies the potential for something extraordinary. The first humans, living in small groups, began to develop tools. These tools were simple stones, sticks, and bone, but they were powerful. They marked the beginning of a new chapter in human evolution. These early tools allowed humans to hunt, gather, and protect themselves. It was a subtle beginning, but one that would set the stage for all of human history. As early humans began to adapt to their environment, they began to change it, too. The control of fire was one of the most significant milestones in human evolution. With fire, humans could cook food, keep warm, and ward off predators. Fire was their ally, and with it, they began to build a more secure, more comfortable existence. But what about the world they inhabited? The earth was still largely wild, untamed, and full of mystery. Forests stretched out as far as the eye could see, and vast plains rolled on forever. There were dangerous predators lurking in the shadows, unfamiliar landscapes to explore, and the unknown waiting at every turn. But there was also beauty in the world, in the rivers, the mountains, and the skies above. The world was full of life, and early humans were just beginning to understand their place in it. For thousands of years, humans lived this way, small groups of hunter-gatherers moving across the land, following the seasons and the animals. They lived in harmony with the earth, taking only what they needed and leaving the rest. They didn't know it yet, but they were laying the foundations for the civilizations that would come later. Can you imagine what it would have been like to live in that time, surrounded by nature, living simply and yet filled with wonder? But change, as it always does, came quietly. Over time, the first human settlements began to form. It wasn't immediate, but slowly, humans began to settle in one place. The land around them became familiar, and they began to plant crops, raise animals, and build homes. With this newfound stability, life changed. Early humans began to build communities, share their resources, and cooperate in ways they hadn't before. The development of agriculture was one of the most significant events in human history. Humans learned to grow their own food, tame the land, and create a surplus of resources. This allowed for permanent settlements, which in turn allowed humans to develop culture, language, and social structures. The first cities began to emerge, and with them, the dawn of civilization. As humans began to settle and create complex societies, they started to interact in new ways. Trade began to flourish, with goods and ideas flowing from one place to another. Humans began to communicate, exchange knowledge, and build more complex societies. These early civilizations, though small, were the seeds of something much larger, something that would eventually span the globe. The rise of civilization was a gradual process. It wasn't an event that happened overnight. It was a slow, steady progression of humanity finding new ways to adapt to their environment and each other. But as human societies grew, so did their influence on the earth. They began to shape their surroundings, build cities, and create technologies that would forever change the world. Think about it. What would it have been like to witness the birth of these first civilizations, watching the transition from small, scattered groups of people to larger, more complex societies? It's hard to imagine, but it's a story that unfolded over thousands of years, and it set the foundation for everything that came afterward. By the time we reached the ancient world, human civilization had spread across the globe. Great cities, like those of Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley, were emerging, each one a testament to human ingenuity. These early civilizations developed writing, art, architecture, and science. They created laws, established trade routes, and built massive monuments that would stand the test of time. And yet, despite all of these advancements, humans were still deeply connected to the earth. They still relied on nature for their survival, and their societies were shaped by the environment around them. The earth, in many ways, remained as much a part of them as ever before. As human civilization spread, so did the ideas and innovations that came with it. From the first written languages to the invention of the wheel, these early civilizations left a legacy that would shape the world for centuries to come. The impact of their achievements is still felt today, as the foundations they built continue to shape the modern world. But for now, let's return to those early days, the time when humans were just beginning to understand their place in the grand story of life on Earth. What would it have been like to stand in a world so full of possibility, where everything was new and waiting to be discovered? Imagine the wonder, the curiosity, and the quiet ambition that drove early humans to build the world we know today. It's a story that stretches back through time, and it's still unfolding before us. As the sun rises over the horizon, the world we know today stretches out before us, a world filled with cities, technology, and human achievements. But this modern world, filled with its towering skyscrapers and complex societies, is far different from the world that first saw the rise of early humans. Yet it is the culmination of everything that came before it, the final chapter in a story that has been unfolding for billions of years. It's hard to imagine, but once this world was a blank canvas, an empty planet, waiting for life to fill it. The early humans, those curious wanderers, began a journey that took them from small, scattered tribes to the great civilizations we see today. Over thousands of years, they developed art, science, writing, and technology. They built cities, crafted tools, and explored new frontiers. They looked up at the stars, wondering what lay beyond their world. Humanity has come a long way since those early days. The world has changed dramatically. We've harnessed the power of the atom, sent humans to the moon, and connected every corner of the earth through networks of information. Modern cities now shine brightly in the night, while machines carry out tasks once thought impossible. It's a world of innovation and advancement and achievement of the collective efforts of humanity. But as we stand in this modern world, it's worth taking a moment to reflect. How did we get here? And more importantly, where are we headed? Think about the world around you for a moment. The cities, the technology, the interconnectedness we now share, these are the fruits of human ingenuity. Yet, they also come with their own challenges. Our planet, while brimming with life, is facing new pressures. Climate change, loss of biodiversity, pollution, and overpopulation. These are just a few of the issues that humanity is grappling with today. As we continue to push the boundaries of what's possible, we must also consider the responsibility we bear for the world around us. In many ways, we stand at a crossroads. The future of life on Earth depends on the choices we make today. Our ability to sustain the planet, protect its ecosystems, and adapt to the challenges we face will shape the next chapter in Earth's story. The Earth has always been a place of transformation, and we are now a part of that transformation. Just as the first humans once adapted to their surroundings, now it is our turn to adapt to the changing world we have helped create. Picture the future for a moment. What might the world look like in the years to come? Perhaps we'll see cities powered by renewable energy, technologies that restore the environment, and global efforts to heal the wounds we've inflicted on the Earth. Maybe humanity will explore the stars, reaching new planets and discovering new life forms. What if we were to live in a world where nature and technology coexist harmoniously, where human progress and ecological balance go hand in hand? The future is not written in stone, it is ours to shape. But as we move forward, we must remember that our actions today will have consequences tomorrow. The choices we make in how we treat the Earth, how we interact with the environment, and how we work together as a global community will decide the fate of the planet. Now, look back for a moment back to the early days of life on Earth. Think of those first tiny cells floating in the primordial oceans. What seemed like a fragile, impossible beginning turned into the flourishing world we see today. Life is resilient, and it finds a way to survive. But it's also delicate, shaped by the balance of ecosystems and the relationships between all living things. As the world continues to change, we must remember the lessons of the past. The Earth has gone through countless transformations, from fiery molten rock to lush forests and vast oceans. Life has found a way to adapt, to evolve, and to thrive. And now, as humans, we are a part of that ongoing transformation. What will we leave behind? What will future generations say about us? Will they look back and marvel at the innovations we created? Or will they remember the challenges we faced and the lessons we learned along the way? The story of life on Earth is far from over. In fact, it's just getting started. We are the stewards of this planet, entrusted with its care. And as we look toward the future, we must ask ourselves, how do we want to shape the world for those who will come after us? The answers are in our hands. As you sit here, taking a moment to reflect, remember that we are part of a much larger story, a story that began billions of years ago with the first spark of life. We are the continuation of that journey, and what we do today will echo for generations to come. Life on Earth has always been about change, adaptation, and evolution. And so, the story continues, our story, the Earth's story, the story of life itself. The future of life on Earth is not guaranteed. But if we approach it with care, with respect, and with a deep understanding of our place in the natural world, we can shape a future that is sustainable, thriving, and full of hope.